Welcome to the most serious podcast. And today I have Mr. Pranav Pai with me, and he is your strongest business sense guy. We will uncover his insights through this conversation. We will know about venture capital, what is it, and we will know about who is Pranav Pai and what he's done in his life. Thank you so much, Pranav, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Very excited to sit here and talk life with you.
Thank you, man. Great to be here. Looking forward.
How do you usually introduce yourself in when you meet friends of friends?
It's been a while since I've been out to socialize. But I just usually say my name is Pranav. I am from Bangalore. And because I'm one of the few people who work in Bangalore who are actually born raised from Bangalore. It feels like so that usually makes for an interesting conversation. And I talk about what I do. I work in a venture capital firm. I'm a technologist and an engineer by training. And that, of course, in India, especially in Bangalore, goes on for hours. So it's a good place to be, and very happy to, of course, be playing a small role in this very exciting area.
And what is that introduction expanded post like 2 3 drinks in the night?
I don't drink much, unfortunately. Uh, I have two kids now, and there's not much time for that. But but seriously, I think look, I work in an industry where it used to be a very silent industry, right? If you think about how companies start anywhere in the world, in
Yeah.
India today, our biggest companies, Reliance, Infosys, TCS, HDFC Bank, they all started in an environment where there was no equity, right? There's no VCs, very few investors, mostly a few people who were dabbling in the public markets would, if you could get a meeting with them, you could pitch them an idea. Mr. Murthy, for example, who started Infosys, his famous story is he built Infosys with zero equity and one loan from Karnataka Bank because he had to pay a down payment for an office. He had so much business coming, he needed more people, he
Yeah.
needed. So I think when I look at just our economic history in India, last 35, 40 years, the way companies used to be started and where they started now, every round is in the headlines. Every journalist is irritating a founder for a quote after they raise money. It's two pens and a laptop, and they're raising $10 million now. So I think this whole craft of starting companies has come a long way. Usually a lot of the questions hinge around, how can you give someone 50 crores when it's two guys and a laptop, right? How can you even think about
Yeah.
these guys will actually use the money properly? Of course, a lot of big issues, negative headlines, of course, has been quite prominent last 2 years. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in this industry. It is quite hard to do, I would say. It's a very brutal, very over competitive, I would say, fairly transactional industry. But I think, in the end, you're able to build great companies, solve real problems, create jobs, of course, I think support the economic growth of the country. And, as we go along, my experience in college and school and so on, I would have never been able to tell you that I'd be where I am by the time I'm however old I am now. So I think, yeah, a lot of things that come out of just being in this industry, doing what I do.
So this is like venture capital, as you say, is not something that you planned on from the get go that you would end up in.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'll walk you through a little bit of how I
Yeah.
ended up. Being in Bangalore, being born and raised here, I think three big influences. My father worked in IT. My father and my mother are both trained accountants, lawyers, and I'm the only engineer in my family. Actually, my brother is a CA by training. So in school, I think you're rarely given, at least back when I was in school, you're rarely given any time to think about what you want to be. Rather, you have to start making decisions when you're, 12 years old, 13 years
Yeah.
old. Will you be in computer science? Will you be in biology? Will you be in commerce? Right? Those are the three options for us back then. Um, and honestly, our teachers were good. I mean, they were genuinely kind-hearted people. They wanted us to succeed, but the pressure of the syllabus, you're writing 12 exams in 10th standard, you're writing 8 exams in 12th standard. There's just never any oxygen to think calmly about what you want to be, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think so many of my batchmates, my classmates, if I look at them where they are now, I would say 80% of them have are doing nothing to do with the choices they were making when I was in school with them. So the choices also mean nothing or mean very little when
Hmm.
you're 35. I'm almost 35 now. So I think the first thing that I'm so grateful for, and there's an interesting story. When I was in eighth standard, back then, now we had to do things 6 standard, 7 standard. But in 8th standard, we had to pick, okay, computer science if you want to be an engineer, biology if you want to be a doctor, and commerce. We had only three options. My mother was not an engineer, right? And she saw I was very good in maths and science, and I was almost 99 on 100 on all of these subjects. I could have been anything. I was 99 in history, I was 99 in geography, I was 99 in English, 98 in English, say. So she said, look, I don't know what to do for you, right? First time I've never seen her throw in a towel and say, look, I don't know how to help you make this choice. Why don't I ask? So my auntie, my
Yeah.
mother's elder sister was a biology teacher. She taught in a government in a army school.
Okay.
So we went and spoke to her, and she said, look, a lot of my students obviously struggle with this. You do two things. You go to this IIT coaching center, and
Hmm.
IIT is where the best engineers want to go. See if that's for you. Otherwise, I'll take you to a medical college. And she actually took me to a medical college. Okay,
Wow.
and I just saw those formaldehyde bottles with the embryo and the baby and all that. I said, no, there's no way in hell I'm doing this. I didn't see the dead body, but I saw from outside a class of students. They were cutting up a cadaver, and I was like, there's no way in hell this is for me. So then I went to the IIT coaching, and my mother and I, again, we walked into, I think, Base is a big, or used to be a big tuition center in Bangalore.
Okay.
We walked in, there's an application form. You write an entrance exam for the privilege to be in a tuition center that will coach you for another entrance exam. It is ridiculous, right? But okay, fine, walk in there, take the paper. And then we looked into the class, and there's 120 students in the class. There's maybe 6 of them in the front paying attention. The back 9 benches are all asleep. In the middle, 2, 3 guys are bunching each other. My mother and I looked at each other and said, okay, clearly this is not for me either. So I mean, in a week, you've eliminated 2 out of the 3 choices. There's no way I want to do. So like I said, my parents are both CA lawyers. So they said, okay, look, you can do CA, but it's miserable. It's more miserable now, and CA is not for you. You're not, I don't think you'll enjoy it. And I agreed. So I picked engineering because I was good at computers.
Yeah.
Long story short, I didn't write IIT, didn't write any of the competition exams. I wrote my state exam, and I got into the best college in my state. It's now a deemed university. But that was my early experience with the technical aspect. Now,
Yeah.
let's say after school, the education isn't great. I wasn't very happy with my undergrad. I think it got me very angry, and that was the first time I made a decision in anger that I remember. Where I said, there's no way after being a good student in school, slogging the way I did, saying no to IIT and all of that, because there's a big craze, right? I think everyone who wants engineering in your batch is writing the IIT exam. I think me
Yeah.
and 2 guys, we were the only. I still remember both the 3 of us would look at each other every time the other kids would talk about IIT, and like we have no idea what they're saying. It's an all boys school. They're talking about studying next to girls and so on. Like everything is alien to us, right? Because
Yeah.
we're in that environment. But when I went to college, first year was when I realized there's just no one cares about what you're learning. No one cares about where you end up. You're totally alone, right? And this whole myth of, okay, you study all these things and you write these exams and then your life will be sorted and you'll figure it out. It's totally untrue. So I think end of the first semester is when I decided I don't want to end my education here. I put in a little bit more work to understand, okay, what's after the Bachelor of
Yeah.
Engineering, what is the next? So masters and so on and so forth. Slogged for 2 years to get into the best universities I could globally. I had a few aspirational schools. Eventually got into Stanford, and I think Stanford really changed my life. I think I found myself. I had no relatives, no friends in that part of the world in California. So my father flew with me there to drop me there, bought me a pillow, and said, "Good luck, dude. I have no idea what you're going to do here, but you seem to be an okay student. You're a good student. You're able to crack these GRE and all this stuff. You figure it out." Gave me $200 and said, "Okay, eat something, eat at least once a day, and good luck."
Wow. That's
So
inspiration.
it's been, yeah. I mean, I'm trivializing a bunch of things. Obviously, they're concerned that I don't end up murdered on the street or something, but um, it's I would say from a parent's perspective, I have two kids now. It's hard to let go of your kid and say, you will figure it out, right? I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna be hands off. It's very hard. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, to be honest. But you also, as the kid, right? You have to know that, yeah, it's someone somewhere down the line you have to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think it happened to me, thankfully, because my parents were conscious a little bit. I had the right advice at the right time. and I'm fairly motivated. I don't like being, just vela and not doing things.
Yeah.
I had to find what I wanted to do. So I'm coming to the point where there's no natural part to VC, in my opinion. If it's of interest, I'll talk about part two of after Stanford, what I realized. But that's all of our shared experience in India, right? Everyone
Yeah.
has a different of the story. So I think we can do better for our kids. I hope I can do better for my children. I think very grateful to my parents that they did enough, little but enough,
Mm,
to
yeah.
get me to where I am. So that's a quick summary of what I went through back as a
I
student.
I presume that the sense of I don't know, maybe this is wrong or right, maybe you can correct me on this, but I felt that you found your just tribe, or you just found your vibe in Stanford more than any educational institute that you've been. And because of I think it's just maybe that's the case, that education outside of India allows the individual to express themselves more in terms of what they want to study or how they choose to study that art, because of not having that added pressure of that peer group doing just the same thing, just everyone riding the same bus. Do you agree with that? That's maybe the reason why Stanford was for you.
Partially, partially. So I'll correct a few things because I
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm very precise about this answer. Put yourself in my shoes. In 2007, I've finished 12th standard. I've not
Okay.
written the exam. I've written my state exam. I have two, three good universities. I have two, three departments, right? Electronics, computer science, IT, ITES, whatever. Um, Rang De Basanti has come out. I don't know if you're pretty young,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
horrible movie. It's a horrible movie because it demotivates you to the point where you're told as a young person the only way anyone will take you seriously if you become a Marxist, hijack a radio station, tend to blow it up. You're anti-authoritarian when you're young, right? Everyone is.
yeah,
You don't like the system, you don't like your school, you don't like this and that. But just imagine the programming that was lopped on us, that become a Marxist. This is the only way, this is how you should channel your energy, right? And I'm not surprised so many people in my generation, JNU is a very good example of that, all
yeah,
just anti-authoritarian for the sake of it, right? That's number one. It's very demotivating, the macro around you, right? Second thing, a few years later, 2611 happens. These clowns walk into Bombay, AK-47s. Horrible, obviously horrible. I have friends whose mother, parents, grandparents were inches away from being shot, right?
wow,
Ridiculous. And our
yeah,
prime minister and our system of governance at the time, no retaliation. They're finding excuses not to take this seriously. They're blaming non-state actors. Times of India comes up with a headline 2 days later, Aman ki Asha, India and Pakistan, citizens should be friends. Don't take this seriously. Horrible, horrible,
yeah,
absolutely devastating. Right now, as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, when this is happening, you tell me, like, if today someone walks into Delhi, blows up the parliament,
yeah,
and then all these professors and all are writing letters to the president saying, please give him biryani in jail, treat him fairly. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like
it's a
as a
disgrace.
person, I like my country,
Yeah,
and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. But you're confused. Why would your country, like, why would the people running this country behave this way? Do they not care for us? Do they not care about us? Do they not care about our opinions? Why don't they take this seriously?
yeah,
And imagine, there are 25 million babies born in 19 when I was born, right? 1988, 89, 90. Those 4, 5 years, my generation. That's 100 million babies. 100 million babies, just 2, 3 years around my age.
yeah,
They're grown up by the time this is happening. They're seeing the reaction to all this is, no energy, no retaliation,
yeah.
no sense of, we represent you, will do what's right for you. Horrible, right? So I'm not surprised. So many of my friends, so many of the people my age, they've not come back. If they left India, they've not come back, right? I don't
Hmm.
blame them. But I would say the environment was fairly unfair to all of us. It let us down. Now, of course, like I said, I worked hard. I tried to get into the best university.
Yeah,
I'm coming to the second very important point. When you go to the US, when you go to the UK, for example, they have they have difficult histories: slavery, wars, colonialization, feudalism. All kind of every country has some weird history, right? No country is clean that way. But they speak about their history with pride. They speak about the American way of life,
yeah.
the
The
American
American
dream.
dream. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So Superman. When they don't have mythology, they make it up.
Yeah.
They're very good at this. They're very good at making you feel proud to be an American, right? And when you're, and I'll explain the second point. In India, back then, no one was talking about, very few people were writing books and talking about Ram Swarup and so on, tried this in the 80s, 70s. A lot of good historians tried, but from the 80s, one party, I'm not saying politically, but it was very clear. One party in power changed the entire syllabus, changed the education system, made it very Marxist, very predatorial, very demoralizing, right?
Yeah.
My history that still I remember in ninth standard told all of us in school, look, I have to teach you the ICSE syllabus. Your history for the next 2 years is basically we lost this war, we lost this war, we lost this war, we got conquered, we got conquered, we got conquered. Gandhi, independence, right?
Yeah.
Horrible. I mean, we built the biggest civilization the world,
Yeah.
right? I mean, come on. I mean, we were the richest country by GDP for thousands of years, but you're not taught any of that. You don't even know the kings that fought around you and won all the wars that you didn't lose.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, so the second point is there was no one invested in keeping kids proud to be Indian, right? Which is very unfortunate.
Mm.
And I think therefore, not a surprise. When I went to the US, uh, I was very sure I want to come back. I think that was the only thing I'm I was very sure of because I didn't know what I'd do. I know I'm a good student. I'll figure it out. I have faith in myself. But one very important decision I wanted to make was I don't want to necessarily leave India with the thought of not coming back. I think that's wrong. I found it a little weird because a lot of the students who were leaving with me, they were going to different universities. That they're all just joking. I'm never coming back. I'll find a job. Whatever. Right? I want to work for Google, whatever. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. I think I'm not ready to make that decision. I want to come back, but I'll see if I'll come back or not. So I left that decision anchored to I'm coming back, but let's see, right? I had to. There was no way to make up your mind fully. My first year in Stanford taught me I'm coming back for sure. Uh, I got to see India from the outside. I got to see how poorly we were treated.
Yeah.
To see one very important thing. I don't think Stanford is a better university because it's American. I think
Okay.
the competition in India is as good as Stanford. Maybe, of course, Stanford is the best of the world, right? The Chinese, the
Yeah.
Europeans, North Americans. So you get to see a very different dimension of competition. But in
Yeah.
India, I can assure you that hunger is there. My batch was extremely competitive. It was very hard to be first or second in class. I was usually one, two, three, and I'm a good student, and it was still very difficult, right? Just in my class.
Yeah.
So I don't think the competition and so on is different, right? I think
Okay.
the subtle difference is in Stanford, you are the customer. The professors, the university, the department, even the guy who runs your dorm building, right? The manager of your dorm. Are you comfortable? How's it going? Is everything okay? Is your heating okay? Are you cold?
Mm.
The bus schedule is changing. An email will go to everyone. Like 1 week before that, the bus schedule is changing. They treat you like with respect as an
Yeah.
adult, and they say, "Boss, you're the customer. You're paying an absurd amount of money because it's a lot of money to study anywhere in the US if you don't have a scholarship." Yeah, you're the customer. They give you freedom because you're the customer. You pick which courses you pick. Which. So if I was supposed to take 4 courses, I would take 11. Right? I would just go
Yeah.
take all the classes I could,
Yeah.
all the classes I could because I knew I'm never going to do an MBA. But let me go see what this finance is about. That's where I learned the business I know. Right? The
Hmm.
business, the business education. I didn't take the degree, but I audited a lot of those courses. I think in India, the system doesn't trust you, right? You're a child. Come in this shirt, come in this pant. You can't wear this. You can't wear that. You can't wear chappal. You have to wear shoes. You can't talk to this person. You can't walk in that side of the corridor. You can't obviously change your department, which is ridiculous. How is a 17-year-old supposed to commit to a career for 30 years? They know
Yeah.
nothing. You're picking a department. You're picking a career when you're 17. So I think that's the subtle difference, right? I am pretty sure if we flip the education system here and give choice to young people and say, you're the customer now, right? You come out of school. If you get into a university, just like the US, you first 1 year, take your time, take all the subjects. There are some basic requirements, take maths, take this, take that, obviously. But then you have a whole bunch of electives, take biology, take political science, take electrical engineering, figure out your department, what you like, and then from years 2, 3, 4, so 3 out of 4 of your years, you can commit to a degree and like a major minor, right? That's what they do in the US. I think that's if you give students that superpower, that will be a superpower for us, right? Then what's happening inside a university? Suddenly, all the departments are competing for the kids, right?
Okay.
Suddenly, professors who have to be the best at teaching, at being a great experience for a student, and really bad departments, right? Really bad professors. The kids don't go to them. Those professors go out of a job. Those departments die, right?
Oh. That's
So
interesting.
the whole problem suddenly goes away when you give kids
Yeah.
the choice versus today they're forced to commit and they have no choice, right? And that's why all these bad departments, bad professors, and they're bad departments, bad professors everywhere in the world. I'm not saying India is different, right? Everywhere in the world, but they don't die, right? They don't update their syllabus. They don't invest in being a great experience. I think those are some of the subtle differences. So if we get a better system, I think it's a superpower. I think you unlock India's ambitions. You give young people in India authority and agency over themselves. And I don't think they're inferior to anyone else in the world. I think we'll crush it. So anyway, I can go on and on, but these are things I saw, right? And I
Yeah.
struggled through that. I saw the differences. I think first year Stanford, it convinced me I have to come back. I maybe I'll
Hmm.
do my job there. I'll learn some things I have to learn, but there's no way I'm building my career in the US. I really wanted to come back. So I think that limiting my areas of degrees of flexibility and my areas of focus, therefore, I think that helped me make sure I work backwards from an outcome, and that's how I eventually ended up in venture cap.
Do you, one follow up to what you just said is that was a state of 2007 of India. Okay. And I think many people who hear this podcast would be somewhat at crossroads. And I think this is like very common, and you would have seen it, of course, when employing people at your firm, that Gen Zs or just people currently coming of age, becoming young adults, are facing career confusions at, at a scale probably unimaginable. So
True.
everyone is just constantly overthinking that, are they making the correct choice? Is this 6 month break too long for me? Should I switch careers at this point? Should I not? Should I build specializations in a specific industry? But I want to ask you this, that is this a time to go to US and do a masters? Is this as good as any time to go to outside of India and do a masters, or is India different from what it was at 2007? Like, what are your stances? If Pranav was 22-year-old, let's say in 2024, and in
Yeah,
India and just out of college, what
yeah,
would he do?
yeah, man, great question. So I'll speak about the differences, right? So first of all, the programming around us, the macro, it's not as demotivating. India is a shining light suddenly. We're the best performing large economy in the world. We've had 10 very good years, I would argue, of economic
Yeah.
growth. The whole tone of India globally has changed. We went from being a global, the five sick economies, we used to be labeled all kind of things, right? Bimaru, the Hindu rate of growth, whatever. We went from all the negative stuff to suddenly we're going to be the next big $10 trillion economy. So I think the macro has changed and we
Yeah.
have less things to blame for our confusion. Okay. So the first thing, I could hide behind the 2611 and all that, right? I mean, any
Yeah.
young people excuses.
Yeah.
But there are less things to from the macro to hide behind, right? Even this, we're going to elections now. Even the opposition parties are struggling to find things to find wrong, right? So I think that's very good. I think that's very healthy, and I
Yeah.
think it gives young people a state of less confusion, and therefore focus on yourself. Don't blame outside things, right? Number one, that's very new. Second, I would say in terms of systems, I think still if so, I was very competitive. I still am very competitive, and for me, knowing I was good enough was very important. And for me, the ability to compete with the best of the world, right? And then figure out, okay, am I that good? Where do I rank? Technical, not so. All of this, the derivative questions, right? For me, the node was my ability to compete and win, right? For a lot of young people, the node is different. For some people, the
Okay.
node is a passion. I'm very passionate
Hmm.
about being a doctor, for example. I'm very passionate about running a business. I want to come back and run my father's business. Some people might have family business. I didn't, right? So the node is very important for a young person to identify their node. I identified my node as that competing, winning, and I was the technical guy, right? I was computer science and so on. So that was my kind of anchor point, right? I would say the second thing is young people have to find an anchor point fast. And you can have any anchor point, right? For example, in Gen Z, I think a lot of people I'm meeting now in colleges, they're very enamored by venture capital and investing, but that's
Hmm.
a wrong note. You can't be a hobby investor running millions of dollars. If you lose other people's money, it's an end of your career, right?
Yeah.
You have to recover from that. You have to be very prepared. You have to train. You have to be in industry. You have to learn a lot of things. It's not the first step. It's kind of the place you end up after going through a series of things, right? So I think today the third point I would say is without an anchor, and a realistic anchor, right? You can't say my anchor is to play, for Real Madrid as a footballer when you're 22 and you clearly even haven't qualified for the Bangalore team, right? Okay, I would
Yeah.
say, okay, you can maybe on FIFA, but not in real life. It's not good enough.
On
Um,
FIFA, I have. On FIFA, I've created
of course,
multiple
so
players. Yeah.
I love playing Madrid on FIFA. It's a great team. But realistically, it's not a real note, right? I would say so.
Yeah.
This oh, I want to work in Google by the time I'm 2024. I'm 22 and I've not even gotten an interview from Infosys as a yes, right? I
Hmm.
would say that you would kind of realize, okay, my anchor is a little bit unrealistic. So I would say have the third thing is be very realistic. Check your motivation to see if it's realistic, right? That's very important. Gen Z sold this very weird combination of believe in yourself and you can do anything and follow your passion, and then nothing matters and everything is trash and there's too many people and we are individually we're nihilistic, we're alone, nothing matters in the end. It's two very disparate motivations. You can't make sense of this, right? They're two extremes. Like you can do anything you want and nothing matters. They're very extreme, right? All the memes are also in these extremes. So I would say that is a very dangerous and new problem. That wasn't true
Hmm.
for us. Um, we were demoralized. There was, yeah, I explained that already. We had a
Yeah.
different problem. Today you have almost unlimited choice, and therefore the extremes, which don't make sense, attract you both at the same time. Right? They keep pulling
Hmm.
you apart because the spectrum of choice is so wide. So I think to counter that, having a really important node, a core, this is what I want my career to be about, right?
Yeah.
That's important. And the last thing I learned this very late. I learned this after I had my first kid, and I lost some family members and so on around the time. Um, my work is not my purpose.
Hmm.
I think the programming around your career is your life is your purpose, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that is very dangerous. In
Hmm.
no point in time do I believe my work is going to fulfill me fully. It's impossible. I don't know anyone for whom, if they've given their life to the work, everything else is okay. Families totally destroyed, relationships are destroyed, they have no friends. You
Yeah.
can't make it about one thing, it'll destroy you, right? Because anything, it can be productive also. You can be, the founder of Facebook also in the end, but if you don't balance your life out, right? And Zuckerberg's a good example. He's my generation, we all look up to him. He's been through hell, right? But finally he's made it. It's $1 trillion company, is beyond his imagination, but he went through hell, right? And if you just follow his journey, making everything about the work, it destroys a lot of other things. It makes you make bad decisions. So I think the last thing is to know that you can make mistakes, you can take some time. You don't have to figure out your life by 22, 23. What I did was, thankfully, someone told me this, is take up to 27, 28. Your first job is not going to be the last job. If you finish your undergrad and then you take 2, 3 years to work, it doesn't mean you can't go back and study. You can do an MBA or whatever, right? For me, it was undergrad and master's right away. So I didn't want to
Yeah.
break it. I just finished it. And then I had time to find what I like. And then finally, when I found something I really wanted, I commit and I make my next 10 years and I succeed. I don't want failure, right?
Yeah.
Today, you don't have to do it back to back. You can finish your undergrad, take some time, then use that time to figure out what specialization, if you need it. Most people do. I would argue you should specialize. It makes you valuable.
Yeah.
Specialize. And then the thing you do next, you can kill it. You can absolutely crush it. You've seen enough of the real world and you're coming back to school with a purpose, right? That flexibility today is very important. Break years and so on, 15 years back when I was in college, still a little bit, you're not sure, you don't know, why do you need a break here? Today, a break anywhere is fine, right? People don't over intellectualize. So I'd say a lot of things are different. I'm skimming through a lot of points. I'm happy to spend more time in any one point. But those are some of the things I would say I would do differently if I were 22 now.
Hmm. And what would I know there is a plethora of factors that go into making that decision, that would you want to engage in education outside of India or inside of India. But can I get a yes or no from you that you are going to Stanford in 2024 in
Oh, yeah,
India if you were 22?
for sure. I would still say my dream schools are all in the US, not Europe. I think a few areas, and if I'm being controversial, I don't mind. I think Australia and Europe, pointless. I think Singapore, not the best, not for the best of India. Definitely Middle East and Hong Kong and so on, no way. I think the US is a superpower for a reason. I think if
Hmm.
you go there and you see it and you're resistant to programming, right? Because a lot of things are going wrong in the US now, right?
Yeah.
Men are not women are not women. There's confusion about race,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I think it's going in a very different direction. It's very counterproductive. It is dangerous for them, and they know it. They have to deal with it. Um, I think still, if you're able to just, if you're a focused person, you don't fall for all the political programming, right? Democrat, Republic. These are not fights you care about, right?
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
they're not giving you those rights, right? Why do you pick a camp? Pointless. Go there, study, specialize. The departments are great. The professors are still fantastic. The competition is intense. Struggle and win. I think that's very important. I think I would go back for that. There are the top 30, 50 universities are all very good, right? They've all invested for 40, 50 years, billions of dollars. There, the government has worked with the universities to create the best engines of training the next generation, right? Now it's mutated, of course. Political science, not sociology, all that they've mutated, but engineering, technical, business, still very good. And I would
Hmm.
say to cut through that and do it. Um, of course, don't fall for the programming. That's my biggest advice, but still the best.
So, Pranav, I wanted to ask this question always to a person who's, reached the heights of when it comes to, forming a business or just being at
No, no,
the pinnacle.
don't say that. Not as
No, no,
20,
no. Let's put you up on
20
a pedestal for this question.
years left. 20 years left.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to ask this that in your like in venture capital, you're always making decisions based off whether you're always kind of in the judgment zone. I guess you are always kind of trying out new things and seeing if this works or not, and always choosing, always placing your bets. Okay.
Yeah.
So does intuition go away in that? Like, do you become too logical in your ways in life that you lose intuition? Does that happen?
Good question. So, um, everyone who's tried investing in general, it's true of all investing, right? Allocating capital for the promise of risk reward ROI, right? Uh, I think everyone should do it with even 10,000 rupees in the public markets
Hmm.
and go through the experience of being lucky, being right, and being wrong. I think all three.
Okay.
I'll explain each one. Being right means, for example, I'll give you a simple example. If you saw COVID, all of us went through COVID, and you saw that, yeah, clearly everything's stopping. Even education is moving to Zoom. You bought Zoom stock, it went up some 700%, right? Yeah, you were right. And a lot of people were right. A lot of people made money on Zoom stock. But that thrill of being right, I made a judgment call, I built a thesis, and the stock moved up and I made money, right? Of course, I hope you sold somewhere along the line. It's crashed 90% since then. But that's an example of being right. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, being wrong. If you shorted the airline stocks anywhere, right? For example, US, all the airline stocks crashed like 50%. And you shorted them and you made some money. But you said airlines will never come back. There's no way in hell. This COVID thing is going to ruin everything, change forever. Obviously, you were wrong. Today, the airline stocks have bounced back record highs. People are traveling with a vengeance. They're setting new passenger volume records every year. So, so you were wrong if you shorted in perpetuity, right? Um,
Yeah.
so you lost money. Go through that. It's very important. And lucky, I would say Tesla stock or Bitcoin, right? There's no way to predict either of those things go up with some logic or whatever. If you
Yeah.
had bought gold and you said, okay, I'm a Tesla bull and I'll just hold and I'll pray. And you were lucky and Tesla went up from like 120 billion to like 1 trillion, right? 10x. Yeah, you made a lot of money. And I hope you're intellectually authentic enough. Tell yourself, I got lucky. There's no way a car
Yeah.
comes with $1 trillion,
That's an
right?
important one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or Bitcoin, there's, you can argue it doesn't exist, right? What is it? It's just a hallucination. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's gone up from $1,000 to $65,000, $70,000 now. If you
Yeah.
bought when it was wherever, even 20,000, you look very intelligent in hindsight, right? So I think it's important for everyone to go through all three and then be honest enough to understand this is how I built some kind of thesis. You can call it intuition, model, whatever, right? And I was right, I was wrong, I was lucky, right? And then it's
Hmm.
the conclusion that, okay, over intellectualizing anything doesn't mean I'll be right. So, for
Yeah.
example, I try to write some linear equations for a venture capital portfolio. Everything, I mean, it works at a certain point. After that, it breaks. Okay, for anyone who's interested. Second, there are spray and pray. You would have heard of this, right? There are a lot of incubators, accelerators, especially in the US, 500 startups and YC and so on, all done very well. But if you talk to the people there, they're like, yeah, I just like this guy, I'm putting 100K, right? Some 10,000 people apply, I pick 50. Okay, I mean, I'm just playing the odds, right?
Yeah.
I'm throwing. After a point, they speak very well. They talk about the science of building a startup and lean startup and blitz scaling, and they come up with really good marketing. I really appreciate and admire that. But in the end, they're quite nice. There's no way to tell Dropbox to be a big company or Uber would have been a big company. You were throwing dice, right? If you ask these people, they will admit it if you're close enough to them. So that's luck, right? And then so many people have been wrong. I mean, every year people lose money and end careers and so on. If you're unfortunately one of them, you'll know it. But if you talk to some of them, they're very smart people. It's not an IQ problem. It's not a competence problem. It's just that things that they couldn't predict or risks they couldn't foresee directly impacted their positions to the point where unfortunately it didn't work out for them. So I think the conclusion, therefore, is there are some things you can model and manage and so on and still go wrong. There are some things you can't model and manage, right? There are unforeseen risks. There are hard to manage rare events. And there are certain parameters you don't know are important, right? And you can't assign weights to.
Hmm.
And then there are some things you should not get wrong. Because if
Yeah.
you do, then it's your competency, it's laziness, it's complacency. You should lose a job. You will be punished for that, right? For example, you don't do diligence and see if a founder has a court case against him and he has a history of fraud, but you just still give him institutional capital. Yeah, someone loses their job for that, right? That's a
Yeah.
no-go. You invest and it doesn't work, sure. I mean, there are a lot of things you can explain why it didn't work. But you invest in a criminal, yeah, that's your fault, right? There's a very clear binary on some things that are expected. So I think that's how I would argue all these things come together. And if you ask me, does intuition go away? I think on some people, some things like people, for example,
Yeah.
timing, it's impossible to model. It's impossible to model people.
Hmm.
People risk. Two founders come to you. Will they be together in 10 years? Will they fight? How will they get along? You have to, do their wives get along? Do their children? I mean, going in second and third order complications, and it's a complex dynamical system, just two bodies, right? Two people.
Yeah.
It's infinitely complex. And then you throw 500 people, they build a team when it's a large company, that's even more complex. I mean, there's no way to build that. So this harassment, that thing, there can always be some things that go wildly wrong. So I think there's some things you have to have intuitions about. And this is where judgment, uh, character, vibes, in Gen Z you say vibes,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that's where the intuition, that's where it's important still. So therefore, if you are a person who's gone through a lot of experiences, right? Good people, bad people, outside India, inside India, different languages, different backgrounds. You've gone in dharnas when you were a kid. You've sat in board meetings when you were an adult. You should willfully expose yourself to painful experiences of different types. That's how you,
Hmm.
right? But then you have to be rigorous in background search and this and forensics and all this stuff. You can't be lazy, right? So I would
Yeah.
say that's the most you can do to prepare yourself. Hopefully, that's a thorough answer, but that's how I have learned it the hard way.
And Pranav, what at a personal level makes you like, what is that personal ambition that is still left unachieved, or that is still pushing you to, what 45 are you chasing?
Hmm. Yeah. My work is not my purpose. That's the first thing I learned the hard way. Thankfully, I realized in my 20s.
Hmm.
I realized my first job. And since then, I've been very, it's almost my work and my career is an instrument, right? It is not,
Okay.
it's the means, it is not the end, right?
Okay.
So being in a VC firm, being an investor, being say a co-founder of a VC firm also, all of that is not something I'm proud of. Meaning,
Hmm.
I can do it because I can say I'm a VC or I can say I'm this or that, right? I did that because it's a means to an end, and I'll speak about the end in some way in a moment. So that's number one. And if you've been through this, you know exactly what I mean. If you are going through this, believe me, you will reach it in the end. Just cut through it. It's hard, but cut through it. I think that's very important to share, right? It's a useful thing you learn. This can't be intellectually told to you. You have to realize it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Very um, second, I think therefore, what is that purpose? Right? I will not share my purpose. Even my wife barely knows, to be honest. My parents
Yeah.
don't know. So it's something you keep very personal. But uh, the means and the purpose truly split up. Okay.
Hmm.
And that's something that you have to do as an individual, anywhere in the world, whatever you believe in, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? This is just you're blessed to be a human being. You get one shot at this. Everyone gets one lifetime that we know of for sure. Whatever after that, what you believe, you believe. But you maximize that by separating these two, in my opinion. And a lot of smart people have said this before me. It's not me. Therefore, the third thing is interesting. I then explore my circumstances. Now, by the time I was finishing my degree, India demoralized us. It didn't make us confident. I don't blame the country. I blame the people running it, right? But I have a deep love for my country. Okay, I can't
Hmm.
explain. It's one of those emotional things. It's like how you like your parents, how you like your kids, how you
Yeah.
like your spouse. Um, I can't separate this country from me. It's a little bit irrational. I get it. I am always an India bull, however bad India is doing. Um, and I try to look for the positives. It's one of the few things where I'm irrational and I allow myself to be, right? Um, and therefore, two, three other things. I'm irrational about the football team I support. I'm irrational about liking some people in cricket and chess and so on, because I like how they compete, right? They lose a lot, but I like how they compete. I always back them. So I allow some irrationalities because I'm human and I enjoy that, right? That's the third next thing. And therefore it gives me uh, bounded joy, if you will. It sucks when my football team loses, but I'm never going to not follow my football team, right? I'm not some plastic
I
fan.
I am so sorry to cut in between, but I have to ask, what football team do you support?
Arsenal, unfortunately. I've been an
Arsenal, you can't say unfortunately, man. Chelsea lost to Arsenal
yeah, yeah.
yesterday, and I'm just so, I don't have words, man. It's just so sad. I
No,
mean,
no,
the
Arsenal
state
do
of
well.
us.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, Chelsea had it coming, honestly. I mean, this Arsenal went through Arsenal's banter years. Now we finally got our stuff together. These are
Yeah,
Chelsea banter years. You spend $1 billion. You have to pay the price. Go through
yeah,
it. It's fun. It'll test your loyalty. Anyway, so that's the rationality part. And then there's the most important thing, opportunity, right? Now, this is where I get brutal. And I know I'm good. I know I'm smart. I've tested myself against fire and I've won sometimes. I've lost sometimes. I know my limits. Know yourself is it takes a long time, right?
yeah.
Uh, I forced myself to be angry to the point where when I was young, I can't keep learning about myself forever. It has to stop. After a
Hmm.
point, I want nothing about me to be uncertain, right? How will I react in a situation? What is important to me? Will I lose my temper here? Will I know what I have to say in this situation? I had to cut that down, and in my 20s, that was done. Right? I set a timer. It sounds impossible, and this is where
Yeah.
in conversations people don't believe me when I say it. But I set a timer. I said after this, I am not learning about myself, right?
Hmm.
And therefore, all I am about is the opportunity, and
Okay.
here's no rationality. Um, and to therefore the means my career is a means to me tapping an opportunity to become a certain type of person, a certain financial situation, and in a certain time, after which I don't want to be struggling for anything. Now,
Hmm.
why am I saying this? Because my parents and their parents before them did not reach point four, right? My grandparents, my father's no money, they couldn't pay for my father to be an engineer. They sent him to CA because one relative of theirs was willing to give him that apprenticeship or whatever, so he didn't have to pay for it. My father was one of the best CAs in the country, sure, but he would have been a terrific scientist or engineer, which is what he really wanted to be, right? He never got that
Wow.
opportunity. He couldn't think objectively. My mother's father, again, lost his parents, had to join the Air Force, had to join defense to support the family, got married very early. My mother couldn't be educated the full degree. She wanted to be an advanced lawyer and so on, basic law, basic CA. Gave up a career for me and my brother. So I am not immune to the sacrifices of, and so many pains in both
Yeah.
communities I'm part of before, right? I am privileged today to be able to think about opportunity so aggressively.
Yeah.
And therefore, I learned the full burden when I lost my grandpa. I mean, I just, you go through that in your 20s. Um, and therefore, I'm fanatic about the opportunity. And that's where I say I'm very happy because the irrationality I have about India and the opportunity in India finally both come together.
Match. Hmm.
They're not anti-gravity. They're attractive. India, when I was graduating college, India was sub 2 trillion in GDP. Today we're
Hmm.
almost, it's
Yeah.
doubled from the time I started my first job to today. right? That's insane. In venture capital, we're supposed to give you an IRR of 18, 21, 24%, whatever, right? India's beta is 14, 15%, which is crazy. I mean, venture capital is competing with the GDP. It's absolutely insane, right?
Yeah.
And the next 10 years, we're going to go from 4 to close to 10, right?
Wow.
The only country on the planet that is going to double at this size. We're the only country on the planet after the US and China that's going to go past 10 trillion. We're the only country on the planet where the mass of its people are young going through this doubling, right? 450 million people are millennials, Gen Z, whatever, sub 20,
Yeah.
sub. I don't think this ever comes again. I don't think next 200 years any country is going to ever go through this again. We can't see too many things 200 years later, but we can project GDP and so on, with some base rates. The World Bank does this quite often. This never happens again, right?
Wow.
Uh, my way of thinking about opportunity, and thankfully the window that we're sitting in India, it's almost providence, but for all of us, right? It's a unique shared opportunity. I don't think I could have let that go. I don't think anyone should let that go. Therefore don't understand why so many people leave India. I just don't get it. And therefore, I think that's how all four things line up from my perspective.
Wow, now I truly understand. I think your bullish side on India, and I for one, I'm very young. I don't have a lot of experience in, let's say, industry or just a general breadth of how a country progresses into what it becomes. But uh, there's just a feeling of celebration, also like a feeling of progress that is being continually made, and you feel that earlier in the episode that you stated that there's just that tonality of how India places itself now in the stage where all the world leaders are present. I feel that is very true. And what because most of the people who listen to this end up listening this to the show are young. So I would just want you to finish this recording with one piece of advice for them, in which which is practical in senses, and also allows them to place themselves very what say profitably in the next 10 years. Like, how can me as an individual, or the any 25-year-old sitting in, let's say, Maharashtra, listening to
Yeah,
this episode, places themselves on the profitable side of this churn of events of India?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so 2 minutes of history, because then it will make sense why what I'll say next.
Okay.
Uh, our grandparents' generation, so 1950 to 1975, right? Um, India was not growing. India had too many people, poor people. We're dying of polio. We're dying of this. We're dying of that. We have famines. We have wars. We lose some war to China. We will, of course, never lose to Pakistan. But we're always under this stress that there is not enough that we're producing to
Hmm.
take care of ourselves. Okay, and it's all to blame. And I'll make this very blunt. Uh,
Yeah.
my grandparents' generation were told it's your fault.
Hmm.
You are educated, you are poor, you don't know this, you don't know that, you're not trained, you're not competent, you didn't go to school, you didn't finish this degree, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. How dare you ask for a wage hike? Don't you know the economy is an absolute trash? You should be grateful for a job. Take what I'm giving you, or else I fire you, someone else will come. Horrible.
Yeah.
I think we understand in 2024 how demeaning it is, right? Today, we're concerned about, oh, is this newspaper writing the right headline about us? Our grandparents were concerned about how to feed their children tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And I think I mean, I've heard that I was fortunate enough where a few of my grandparents, both sides, were alive long enough to tell me how bad it was. One of them served in the Air Force. He told me about how bad it felt to lose a war, how meaningless it was to win a war also, because the prime minister back then told you nothing, right? They didn't tell
Hmm.
you, they don't consider it a victory. It was crazy, right? But we were defeated. We were totally exploited. Everything was stolen from us. It is very hard to be in that situation and expect optimism for the next generation. Our parents' generation, right? They were born in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, but they grew up in the 80s, 90s, right? And it was even worse because we were trying to be better. Now we are building some companies. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. We're trying to grow, green revolution, this, that. We're trying to grow more food. Um, but we run out of money. In 1981, we got liberalized, right? Liberalize means you open up your markets, you allow companies from outside to come in. You become more free market, etc. We were 50 years of socialism and nothing happened. We got broke. We had $5 billion of foreign exchange left, which means we couldn't even afford to pay the interest on the loans we had taken from the rest of the world, World Bank,
Wow.
US, UK, etc.
Yeah.
What kind of system was this? It stole from us. It stole. I'm so angry at that system because it stole my grandparents' lives from them. It stole
Yeah.
the children and young adult life from, right. And that's why socialism, Marxism, I have no pity for that. I think that's a pollution. It's a virus. It's very dangerous. It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? And we have 50 years of experience to show us to see that that doesn't work for us. Even after 1991, right? We have some hilariously large positive stories.
Hmm.
The best performing stocks of Asia since 1990 are HDFC and Infosys,
Hmm.
compounded at 24.1% and 24.7%. Okay. No, Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, all these very fancy companies you talk about in startups, not even come close to compounding at that rate for that long, right? But if you remember, I don't know if you were probably in diapers back then, but even when you guys were building those companies, right? And I saw this because in Bangalore, IT was the only thing keeping the city up, right? IT and biotech. There's nothing else, a sleepy town before that. Our headlines, all these Marxists, they call them coolies, they berate them when they give when any company gives guidance, right? My next quarter, I expect this revenue. They would mock their guidance. They would
Hmm.
mock founders for giving an optimistic guidance, and they would write nasty headlines. A cyber coolie is writing, hallucinating about next quarter's revenues. That's literally what they would say. Okay, so this country had become, after 50 years of socialism, whatever, right? Pseudo Marxism had become the kind of place that ate itself and embarrassed you for imagining you'll be successful. Horrible.
Wow.
I mean, I don't want to curse on your pastor, but on your podcast, but it makes me so
Yeah.
angry. It makes me so angry that we ridicule people for having ambition and people who are the most successful people of their generation. It pains me.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
so sad. Yeah.
And therefore, when I'm telling you and Gen Z now, in 2024, when so many people around you are suddenly proud to be Indian, one temple thing happens and it feels like the whole country is having like one mass, cathartic episode of, oh my God, closure, right? It sounds weird to you, but you guys didn't live through the pain of the last 75 years. And I
Yeah.
didn't live through it, but I saw it a little bit more than you. And I
Yeah.
saw what it did to the people who lived through it. It stole from them, man. It robbed them. And we should never forgive that. And my generation will say we should never forgive that. The only thing you should say is never again. No
Hmm.
from you. No one should berate you for being Indian. No one should blame you for the faults of the things around you, right? That you don't control. Most importantly, when you are asked in once in 5 years, okay, you decide who should run the country, only please, for God's sake, vote for people who are telling us, yeah, we work for you, we'll build a country where it's supposed to be, right? They may not deliver because it's a very big country, it's very complicated, a lot of things that go wrong, right? But for God's sake, we cannot support people who made us go through that, berated us, because they have not changed. They are the same people that until they die, right?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is it's not political. It's beyond politics. Is as a
Hmm.
country, as a people, we get one shot. We were born in one country. Most of us will die in this country. We get one lifetime like anyone else on the planet. We cannot live that lifetime being blamed for things that we didn't do. We cannot live
Yeah.
that lifetime being abused for being Indian, for believing what we believe. Never again, right? And therefore, this generation, I think we have earned the privilege of giving the Gen Z, this generation, right, the space to say, this baggage cannot interfere with your life or should not. Now you decide. Now be better, right? All of us struggled. All of us were infected by all this pollution so that you don't have to do it. You don't have to get infected by that. But like I said, when you remove all the pain, right? And this is true of any human being anywhere, when you remove suffering, when you remove pain, some people, most people, don't have this cause to fight against.
Hmm.
Okay, like, so what is my life a struggle against, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a struggle. Your life is your struggle. Your career is your struggle. Your pet is your struggle. Your boyfriend or girlfriend is your struggle. Your social media following becomes your struggle. When you create a vacuum of pain, devoid of pain, And if you fill it with nonsense, right, then unfortunately nothing can save you. It's a self-inflicted pain. And okay, you can't blame. Like I said, I started the podcast by saying you can't blame India, you can't blame the economy,
Yeah.
you can't, yeah, you can't blame the interest rate. Uh, there are things that you control now, and you should own it. You should grow up and own it, right? My parents could not grow up and own it. Whatever they did, I mean, they were screwed, right? Unfortunate. My parents could try a little bit here and there, limited options. My generation, more options, but we were still demoralized. Whatever. I can make an excuse that look at
Yeah.
Aman ki aas and all this. You can't make excuses.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to be an uncle to you guys now. So you are in your 20s. You look at in 5 years. I'm 40. You call me uncle, right? Cool. Call me uncle. But I will tell you, bacha, what did you do? Right? This is
Yeah.
what I did. And I went through all this. What did you do, boss? You're 30 now.
Yeah.
And we have to hold each other in check. And we will. I promise you, millennials and Gen Z is going to be a very interesting dynamic. Within 10 years, we'll run the country. Okay. We'll be 45. No, 50 to 35 is when people run the country, right?
Yeah.
We'll run companies. We'll be your boss's boss's boss, right? We'll be your teachers in college. We'll be teaching your kids, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do all kinds of things. We'll do new things. Right? Every generation finds a new way to mess with the next generation or the one after, right? So we'll be weird. We went through all this Cartoon Network, Dexter's Laboratory, Dragon Ball Z, Power Rangers bullshit. Yeah, our memes are very different than yours, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to be interesting, but we are running out of excuses to blame the outside. So we have to, now my generation, your generation, it's about we crush it, we become number three. How do we become number two if we can? Right? It's very tough after US and China. But now we should all be rich, we should all be prosperous, we should make our parents proud. If our grandparents are alive, we should thank them, right? For keeping us alive. Yeah, I think that's how I would close. I would say we're out of excuses. Let's make this count. I think next 10 years, whatever we do, we're gonna double, right? It's unbelievable. We should not miss this window. Right? Wherever you are, school, college, whatever you are doing, the doubling is going to change everything. Prepare for it, take advantage of it, don't let it go.
This is by far one of the most motivating episodes that I've recorded, because you have just a sense of, because the way you hold accountable, the way you held me accountable, I kind of, felt that question very personally. That you said, okay, when you're 30, even if just people think and sit and think about it for a second, that no one asks that question. I think you get so far away from accountability that you lose a sense of. Okay, you can't ever fail if you don't have a goal. That's what Jordan Peterson says. So I just feel that if you are not being held accountable, then it's very easy to lose track and blame it on so many things that are not even real problems. But once you say that, okay, I did this, and what did you do? What challenges did you conquer, or what is net positive that you did for the country or for your society? I think that accountability is certainly lost on my generation. I'll be very blunt and honest about it, because of the comfort and the just a coddling of resources that we've got. But yeah, completely aligned with whatever you said, and this has been a lesson in history for me, for India as well. Honestly, didn't have exposure to what all first hand insights that you told me, and I'm sure that many people who listen to these episodes are well enriched in that history lesson of India. Thank you so much, Pranav. Amazing to talk to, and I hope we record another episode 10 years down the line discussing on what we did talk
No, so
about.
it'll be fun. I'm sure we'll say we did great things. We had a good time. We created net positive, and we didn't make our parents and grandparents less proud of us, more proud.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pranav, for taking your time out.
Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.